The Big Bang Theory gave us 12 seasons of quirky brilliance, centered around a socially awkward but genius physicist, Sheldon Cooper. From his strict roommate agreement with Leonard to his complicated love story with Amy Farrah Fowler, audiences were taken deep into Sheldon's adult life. But when young Sheldon hit the airwaves, it gave fans an entirely new perspective, the origins of the idiosyncratic genius. What came with that was an influx of new characters, family members, neighbors, teachers, and friends, who shaped young Sheldon into the man he'd later become. Surprisingly, though, many of these individuals are never even mentioned in The Big Bang Theory. As though they vanished from his life, or his memory, without a trace. Here are 8 fascinating characters from young Sheldon who, despite their importance, were never brought up in the parent series. 1. Pastor Jeff Difford. Pastor Jeff is a recurring figure in young Sheldon, acting as the youthful and well-meaning spiritual leader of the local Baptist church. He's often at odds with Sheldon's logic-driven worldview, but there's a mutual respect between the two. Pastor Jeff's attempts to include Sheldon in church activities lead to some humorous exchanges, and he becomes an unlikely figure in Sheldon's upbringing. Yet, in The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon never once references a pastor who was a fixture of his childhood. Not a single sermon, awkward church play, or fire and brimstone moment comes to mind. For a man as obsessed with recounting his past as Sheldon, Pastor Jeff's absence feels like a significant omission. 2. Billy Sparks. Billy Sparks is Sheldon's neighbor and often a source of discomfort for young Sheldon, who's terrified of him due to Billy's chaotic energy and bizarre habits, like owning farm animals. Billy, however, seems to have a fondness for Sheldon and often shows up in odd but endearing ways. Given that Billy is a major character in Sheldon's early life, a literal boy next door, his complete absence in The Big Bang Theory is curious. You'd think an encounter with someone from that past would warrant at least a fun fact from the adult Sheldon. 3. Mandy McAllister. Mandy McAllister enters the series as Georgie's love interest, a woman significantly older than him who initially wants nothing to do with the teenage Cooper. However, over time, her storyline develops deeply, and she becomes pregnant with Georgie's child, eventually moving in with the Cooper family. Mandy is one of the most significant new additions in young Sheldon, especially in later seasons. And yet, in The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon never once mentions his brother having a child, let alone a partner named Mandy. Her entire existence, and Georgie's transformation into a father, is never referenced. 4. Connie, Meemore, Tucker's boyfriends. Meemore is the feisty, gambling-loving grandmother who dotes on Sheldon and provides comic relief in both subtle and bold ways. In young Sheldon, she has several boyfriends, including Dr. Sturgis and Dale Ballard, both of whom become central to the show's subplots. Her love life is depicted with humor and unexpected depth, especially her complicated relationships with older men who are just as stubborn as she is. Yet in The Big Bang Theory, Meemore is rarely mentioned beyond being the sweet grandmother who made him cookies and called him Moonpie. There's no hint of the romantic chaos or the men who made her life, and Sheldon's by proxy, so colorful. 5. Paige Swanson. Perhaps the most glaring omission of all, Paige Swanson is introduced as a child prodigy just like Sheldon, perhaps even more gifted in certain areas. She challenges Sheldon intellectually and emotionally, showing him that he's not the only genius in town. Paige's presence forces Sheldon to confront his own insecurities and expectations. One would think that Sheldon, as an adult, might remember or even compare someone to Paige, especially given how much she affected him. But there is not a single mention of her in The Big Bang Theory. Did he forget, or is there a reason he chose to bury her memory? 6. Brenda Sparks. Billy's mom, Brenda Sparks, is a rough-around-the-edges neighbor with a sharp tongue and a soft heart. She shares a fascinatingly awkward chemistry with George Cooper Sr., especially after the death of her husband. The dynamic hints at emotional entanglements that could have influenced Sheldon's view on marriage, family, and infidelity. Despite her integral role in the family's life, adult Sheldon never refers to Brenda in The Big Bang Theory. Not once does he mention the nosy neighbor who had a front-row seat to his family drama, and potentially played a major role in it. 7. Dr. John Sturgis. Dr. John Sturgis is one of Meemore's suitors, but more importantly, he's a professor at East Texas Tech and becomes one of Sheldon's early mentors. He's eccentric, awkward, and brilliant, someone Sheldon clearly admires. Their scenes together are touching, funny, and deeply formative for young Sheldon's intellectual growth. Given Sheldon's frequent references to childhood teachers and mentors in The Big Bang Theory, it's shocking that Dr. Sturgis is never named. He's a key figure in Sheldon's educational trajectory, and yet he's nowhere to be found in adult Sheldon's narrative. 8. Missy Cooper's teenage friends. In young Sheldon, Missy begins to develop her own identity, with friends, romantic interests, and a personality that diverges sharply from her twin brother. Her coming-of-age stories include numerous friends and confidants who help shape her rebellious but endearing nature. Despite being Sheldon's twin, adult Sheldon never reflects on the people who shaped Missy's life. There are no anecdotes of her getting into trouble with friends or how her teenage years might have affected their sibling dynamic. It's almost like her entire adolescence, and those who were part of it, vanished. So why were they left out? The answer might lie in narrative economy. The Big Bang Theory wasn't trying to craft a detailed backstory until much later, and by then, Sheldon's past was more of a vague cloud than a structured timeline. Young Sheldon, in contrast, is deeply rooted in character development, especially for those around Sheldon. Another explanation could be that Sheldon, being Sheldon, represses or forgets parts of his life that don't fit into his worldview. Maybe the omission of these characters isn't accidental, but psychological. That's a theory worthy of study itself. What's clear, though, is this: young Sheldon adds a depth to Sheldon's life that the Big Bang Theory never touched. It expands his universe, fills in the blanks, and gives us new characters to love, even if Sheldon himself doesn't seem to remember them. Would you like a visual timeline showing which characters overlap in both shows?